Hey, good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us tonight for Conversations with John. And today I have Roger Henricksen. We all know him. You're used to seeing us on Sunday morning.
Good evening, everybody.
Regularly. Hello, Roger. Thanks for filling a different role for us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
But as you know, Roger, hopefully you know that Roger's our chairman of Deacons, and Roger's active in our young adult ministry as a leader. He and Nancy, and just wanted you folks to get to know him a little better about the personal side of Roger that some of us know and greatly respect him for. So I appreciate your leadership and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, again, a different format, same chair.
That's right, same chair. I'm used to this.
So, Roger, tell us just where you grew up, where you grew up, where you went to school, those kind of things. Just give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So I was born in a suburb of Chicago, Elmhurst, Illinois, and so I spent my first 7 years up there. And then my parents in 1974 moved down to Punta Gorda. Oh. So Florida's been home after that and ever since. I've always considered Florida to be home. My parents one day asked me, I don't know, it's one of those things of, in the modern pop culture, you got to see if your kids are holding any grudges against you. And it was just a couple of years ago, they asked, so son, and what way brought you up? And then, have we done anything to harm you, or do you have any grudges? And I said, well, I got one thing. I'm like, it's waiting for it. I go, I wasn't born in Florida because I really, I really count myself as being a Floridian. I love Florida, so that's about the only thing.
Very cool. So I'm sure they were crushed.
Yeah,
they're like, oh darn.
So
we did our best.
Exactly. Yeah. Grew up in Florida. Really enjoyed that area. The house I grew up in down here was only a couple blocks off the Peace River, and had a dog, and we lived in a rural area. So, it was great. I was always down on the river, and at low tide could walk for miles, along the shoreline. It was undeveloped. And just, it was a great place to grow up. Had a good time.
Cool. Very cool. Where'd you go to college?
I started out in community college.
Me too. Go junior
right,
college.
That's right. Edison Community College down in Fort Myers, and that was partly because of, and we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but I got my first job out at the airport, and part of my employer's benefit was, if I would stay and work for them, they would help pay for the community college, and I could continue my flight ratings and stuff. So that's how I started there, and then I wound up going and finishing my degree at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach.
Very cool.
That's actually where my bachelor's is from. Yeah.
So, before we get to your story as in flight, where you get your head up in the clouds, let's talk a little bit about how you came to know the Lord, your spiritual pilgrimage, and those things.
Okay, so. My parents always were very big. I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger than I am, Rhonda. And she and her husband are missionaries. And they got 4 great girls that grew up in the mission field. Wow. And
where are they on the mission field at?
They are currently back in the home office here in the States.
Okay.
My brother-in-law took a job in the home office. So they're actually, they were with Transworld Radio, and they were down in Bonaire for years. And he is now their, I believe his official title is like Vice President of Technology.
Wow.
But nowadays, so they used to have, this is kind of a neat story too. They used to have all over the world, they have all these transmitter sites.
Right.
And they're bigger than Voice of America.
Sure.
They've got transmitters in Siberia, Sri Lanka, Africa, you name it. There's
Wow.
transmitters everywhere. And they used to have DJs on site, basically I'm calling
The
DJs,
radio,
but they had to have pastors and teachers on site to do all the programming and to do things. Well, nowadays with the technology that we have, they have embraced that. They've been able to cut their costs and go to more areas by, you can put a server out there. We have all these people that can speak all these languages here in the United States.
Right.
They can record the programs. They can send it to the satellite. Satellite sends it to the server. It'll play at the proper time, and the gospel can go out to these
Wow.
radio shows.
Yeah.
And so he is a big part of their technology, in doing all that.
Very cool. Yeah, how cool. Things you don't think about when you talk about technology, and how it can impact literally the mission field. And
Yes.
that's very cool. That's very cool. So back to you. You have a younger sister.
So I have a younger sister, and my parents were always very big on family devotion time.
Okay.
And so we would always, after dinner, generally, or in an afternoon sometimes, sit down and do a devotional time. And there was, my dad was working late one night, as my mom, and she had asked, somehow, a lot of times we used books or we used, different things. And one of the devotions that day was, actually about salvation. She asked me, do you understand what that is? And it was right before we moved to Florida. I was 7 years old. And I said, yeah, I understand that. And she said, she gave me the plan and she asked, is this something that you would like to consider? And I said, yeah, I understand it. And I could repeat it. I knew it. I said, yes, I want Jesus in my heart.
Excellent.
So I accepted the Lord, and then from there, we've always been involved in church and youth group growing up, junior high, high school. A big part of
Student ministry.
Yeah, student ministries are huge things to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Great friendships out of student ministries. Obviously, great learning the Bible. I was on the quiz team in high school, so great to way to learn God's word and put it in your heart. And so there have always been that growing element throughout.
Sure.
I was your normal teenager. I was your normal college student.
Right.
I've had my moments of
wandering.
I want to go my way. Nothing too severe, but thank God.
Thank God.
But there have been those times where my my selfish self, my inner man wanted to go in front of God.
Sure.
We've all have our moments with that.
Still do sometimes.
Still do. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. Well, that I love your story. That it was just kind of the faithfulness of your parents, faithfulness of your family, a strong church background, the importance of student ministry and children's ministry, and positive influences in your life other than just your mom and dad. I think those are just great markers in all of our Christian lives that we can look back on. It's cool to hear what Jesus has done in your life, but I always like to ask people, what's he doing in your life today? What's something that you could say that my relationship with the Lord is alive and active, and today he's teaching me or working with me in what area?
I think doing the studies with you and being, teaching the young adults group when we were all meeting together. And I think today I've become, I'm in my 50s now, life is slowing a little bit. Right. And I've really enjoyed the depth of study and putting together some things that I just never put together. I haven't been to seminary,
right? And
so in getting into God's word, and also like some of these aha moments of seeing Jesus in the Genesis story, seeing just things like that. That it's like, wow, this is fascinating, and then getting to share it through teaching has been awesome.
I have been to seminary. But I could think I got two things out of them. One of them I married her. But anyway, but no, that's not true. But I did marry her. But it's about seminary. Shut up. Anyway, but just I can resonate. I think those aha moments where you're studying a passage of scripture or listening to a podcast or something, and something just kind of clicks, and you're like, that's so cool. That's so cool that even today, we're learning stuff new.
Yeah, and I truly do feel more and more the presence of Christ in reading the Bible and prayer, and just, it just seems the older I get, the more I feel it.
It's cool. Very cool. Is there a passage of scripture or a verse that that you just kind of hold on to, that's kind of your life verse or your guiding verse?
It was actually, so back, and it was one of the first, when I joined the quiz team, Philippians was one of our first, we started out with the, go eat pork chops.
Yeah.
Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians.
Right.
And so Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7 have always been.
Sure.
But today I actually wanted to back it up a little bit.
Sure.
And go back to verse 4 and a little bit further, verse 9. And I've got most of it memorized, but I pulled it up on my phone because I kind of wanted to stop a little bit. And it's hard for me if I've got something memorized to stop and start again.
Right.
But I just think in today's, world with COVID, with, all the political stuff, just going on right now, that this passage just really, it still speaks to me.
Yeah.
And so starting in verse 4, and this is the NIV version, Philippians chapter 4 is, rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. Huge. We could all use a little of that right now. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And then finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Yeah. And I just think right now, with all that's going on, the do not be anxious about anything, giving it through prayer and petition, presenting our request to God, getting that peace. But then also just with all the negativity right now, but thinking about what's good, right, noble, admirable, all of those
Very
things.
cool. That's awesome. Thanks. I think we did a thing on gentleness a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Pull it up and watch it. Yeah,
exactly.
No,
So-
it is. We need some gentleness, and I remember saying to you then, I need to remind myself of that. Just,
I do too.
yeah.
It's easy to let there's so much anger and aggression out there now. It's easy to feed into that.
It really is. It really is. Very cool. Well, thanks for that. Thanks. I think it's a cool, a great verse for all of us to remember, and just to remember it. And again, it gets back to what you said earlier about the power of God's word. Just speaking it, you can feel the power in it, and then as we live it out every day and make that our goal, it can really have an impact. Thanks for that. Thanks. Back to the flight, the airport action, and going to the school in Daytona, aeronautic. What was it again?
Embry-Riddle University.
Yes. How did you get? You're a pilot. That's your career. Your work with Fly with Southwest. Tell me about how that kind of passion started and the pathway that got you into the pilot seat.
Okay, so the suburb of Illinois that I grew up in was like literally on the side of O'Hare Field. I mean, airplanes were coming over all the time. So always had my head up looking at the airplanes.
Right.
B, my mom's brother had his private pilot's license.
Okay.
And he was a very successful contractor, businessman in the Chicago area. And every time that we would visit, he would say, "Hey, you want to go fly?" Yeah, let's go fly. And that's where I really got the love for it. Was to go out with my Uncle Bob and to go fly. His shop was actually literally, this is back before, of course, all the security stuff nowadays. His shop, there was a railroad track, and then the airport was on the other side of, there was a field, the railroad track. Right. So we would literally just cut across the railroad track, walk across the runway, go rent the airplane, and go fly. That's the way it should be done.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And
of course, you look both ways before you cross the track. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, because those Illinois freight trains are big, and those Amtrak trains go fast. So anyway, that was in Schaumburg, Illinois. So we would go fly, and I fell in love with it. I was like, when I get older, I want to be like my Uncle Bob. I want to get my private pilot's license, and I want to go fly around and have fun. Well, then later on in life, and I never quite really associated that with the airlines I were flying over for whatever reason. But when I was in high school, my one of the English teachers, she taught sophomore English, she and her husband had an aviation explorer post. It's a division of the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
And so they had this aviation explorer post with the school, and it's a co-ed program, and it was teach you about aviation and aeronautical science and everything. And her husband and his brother owned what we call fixed-based operator at the operation at the airport. So they had a flight school, they did charter and different things with the airplanes. And so I had been active in the post, and it was my junior year of high school. And she came to me and said, hey, you know, we are really, my husband is looking for someone to, you know, kind of wash airplanes, work in the rental office, just do different things. We need a part-time employee. Are you willing to do this? Help us out. So, yeah, sounds good. So I quit my job at McDonald's and I went to the airport. And I
change your career path early on.
That's right. And I have to laugh about this because it's so true of aviation, but I took a pay cut to get my first job in aviation because pilots don't make much up front, just on you. So I did that, went to work for them, and then that was in my senior year. I would, you know, was sending out college applications and things like that, and they called me in the office one day and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you know?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm sending out these college applications. Not quite sure what I'm just like." Who knows in high? I was going to be an archaeology major. I was going to be, I was throwing stuff out. So anyway, because Indiana Jones, who wouldn't want to be like Indiana
exactly.
Jones?
That was the thing. The hats are made.
That's right. So they said, well, if you'll stay here, we like you a lot. If you'll stay here and keep working for us. And they also, I'd gotten my private pilot's license my senior year of high school. And they said, and they made all the employees, they treated us really well from the standpoint of they basically, the mechanical cost for the airplane and the fuel was what they would let us as employees rent the airplane for. So it was, it was downright cheap. Yeah. So that's how I actually got my ratings with very little expense and no debt. It was by doing that. So, which is unheard
of, yeah.
So and once again, I think that's kind of God's provision too, that, you know, he, during this whole time that he had this path set up to do this. And so I get my private pilot's license. They asked me to stay on. I like, yeah, do that. So I started going to the community college, and if our agreement was if you got a B or better in the class, they'd reimburse me for the class. And so did my couple of years. I didn't get my full AA. I was just short of that when, unfortunately, in the early 1990s, you know, the economy really tanked with the first Gulf War, and they had to lay off employees, and they were going to lay off employees. And I knew some of my friends really needed the job, and I knew that I really needed to finish my degree. And so I said, hey, what if I take off and go finish my degree, and, you know, we just make it work like that. And they're like, yeah, and come back after, please, if things work out okay. So I went, did my last couple of semesters there, but I already had all my ratings. I was already actually even flying a jet at that point for them. And so we did, you know, I started as a flight instructor, got my hours up, and then started doing charter and the twin engine airplanes, and then eventually had worked my way into the jet. So got my bachelor's degree, came back, worked for them for a few more years, and eventually wound up with my corporate job, and flew corporate for a while, and then made the step up to, I was originally hired by AirTran out of Atlanta, and then of course AirTran got bought by Southwest, and so that's been the progression, and it's been 21 years now with the airline. So.
Wow. Very cool. What's one of the more challenging things that you deal with as an airline pilot?
I think, well, there's all different things. One is the system that you have to operate in, because as an airline pilot, you're held to such strict regulations between the FAA itself and within the company. Every company's got their operations specifications and, you know, all of their manuals, and I mean, it's volumes of material that you are held responsible for, that you have to know. So that's probably the hardest job of the pilot side. By this point, we've all got enough experience just flying that that's kind of the easy part and the
Sure.
fun part.
Okay.
But it's staying legal. It's all of these things like that.
Gotcha.
And as being a captain, I think the hardest job is that you're the maestro of the orchestra.
Yeah.
You've got to I've got to interact with the operations agents. I've got to interact with the ground ramp workers. I've got to interact with the flight attendants. I've got to interact with the customers. And I've got to wear all these different hats, be the manager on duty. Ultimately, before every flight leaves, there's we have dispatchers that plan our flight for us, but I have to sign off on everything that the dispatcher did and sign off that I've inspected the airplane, that it's okay, everything. And so I sign this signature. I have to sign my name twice. And one is that I'm fit for duty and rested and everything else, and then the other one is that I accept this flight plan in the airplane and that I'm going to go do this flight. Well, a big part of my job too is risk. Managing
Sure.
risk. I call myself a risk mitigation specialist. And Southwest, we're of course, like every airline, we're very safety oriented. And we have to balance being cost, risk, all of these different things. And so I've got to say that I'm willing to accept this and that everything is good. Well, the company's actually figured out a dollar amount.
Wow.
And if something were to happen, if there was a catastrophic loss of that airplane with, heaven forbid, with, lawsuits, everything else, there's basically about $2 billion of liability for every flight. $2 billion
Wow.
worth of liability for every flight. So every time I sign my name, I think about $2 billion.
Wow.
And let's make sure we get this right.
Exactly.
So,
That is pretty challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and that's the thing, juggling all of that.
Yeah. There really are a lot. It's more than just flying that plane like you did back in high school.
Yeah,
it really
exactly.
Is. Yeah, that risk mitigation is huge.
Mm-hmm. And there's, I jokingly say too, there's a lot of self-preservation in this whole, I am in the pointy end.
You're right.
Right. It's just
takeoffs have to equal landing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's always funny. Anyway, you've talked to me before about being in the pilot's chair, flying and seeing God's majesty in His creative order, and where your own personal spirituality and faith and your career kind of intersect. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I really enjoy, seeing a sunrise, seeing a sunset, flying over the Rockies, flying down the Caribbean and seeing the islands and the blue water. And it is really nice when the radio is kind of quiet, especially early mornings or whatever, that, I can take a verse and just kind of meditate on it, but then look at the majesty and creation. And it's interesting because guys will talk, and they'll open up, and I do fly with a lot of Christian pilots, and some who obviously aren't, but we talk, and
Right.
And it's amazing, even among the ones who are not Christians, but a lot of them will admit or even bring it up about, there has to be a creator. There has to be something divine about this. Just because it's so majestic, so beautiful, it just can't be an accident.
Right.
And it's just really neat to see.
That is, and that how that, I think even in your line of work, I think our spirituality and our careers cross where there are those opportunities for conversation. But I don't think your career is unique in that. I think all of us,
Yeah, absolutely.
if we look for those areas in life where our faith can intersect with whatever we're doing, there will be those points of conversation. And it's been my experience that a lot of times those unbelievers will open the doors for us. And it's that, are we willing to walk through the opportunity? It's not like we have to beat the opportunity or beat a drum and make an opportunity.
Right.
I think God presents those opportunities.
Yeah.
And then it's for us to walk through.
It was in the Think Act B series. There was, one time I just said that, one of the pilots I was flying with, she asked me, she said, every time we have a few minutes of downtime, you're pulling out your iPad and I see you reading. What are you reading? I'm like, the Bible.
The Bible, B-I-B-L-E.
And so we got talking about that, and she was talking about how she had walked away for a while and was reconsidering her relationship with the Lord and starting to go back to church, and so we had some good conversations after that, and
cool.
it led into that. So,
well, thank you for stepping through those doorways. That's very cool. Let's transition a little bit as chairman of the deacons here. We were chatting the other day, especially as we think about regathering for worship here in just a week now. You were talking about some of the things that Southwest does as far as mitigating the risk of COVID that we could use here at First Baptist. Tell us a little bit about some of those things, about the masking and the social distancing and what the studies of Southwest have found.
Okay, so as you know, you've probably seen it already, but Amy and John put together a really cool video with Dick Crippen narrating, and but all of those things that they presented were what Southwest jumped on really early. They got together with, of course, they're a Dallas-based company. They got to get together with the University of Texas Medical School and with experts there. And from early on, they started taking the advice of the CDC and the WHO and saying that, in all the best practices. And they made it mandatory for us, which I have no problem. Hey, it's my paycheck.
Right.
Cooperate.
Yes,
Gladly
sir.
cooperate. So anyway, but they, from right in the beginning, they said, okay, anytime you're in uniform, you're going to wear a mask. Especially, and that is because when you're in the public viewpoint, we need to instill public confidence that it's safe to fly. And of course, they blocked out the middle seats, and that's social distancing. So, and they were also like, please, among your peers, coworkers, social distancing, wear your masks, wash your hands. They provide, we have always had, because of our oxygen masks and things, we've always had sanitary wipes in the airplanes, but now it's like we have, they hand out all the time, bottles of hand sanitizer, everything else.
Right.
So keeping your hands clean, doing the social distancing, wearing a mask, all of the best practices that, don't come to work when you're sick. We actually have an employee personal responsibility checklist that we had to sign off on. That I won't come to work if I'm sick, if I have a fever, all of these things, which is just good. It's loving your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly.
It's being a good servant's heart, and that's just what you do. So that being said, it is proven that all of those things work. And how do I know that? Because they just released a study, and so forgive me here, so the infection rate among the general population, I don't remember, it's per 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, whatever that rate is, but basically 2% of the population is continually getting infected with COVID. That's the way it's growing.
Right.
And so they went back now and they've looked at airline personnel who are, we've been front lines. So I've been working ever since the crisis started, and even before we knew we had a crisis. The flight attendants are in the airplane. We've got, all these people that are in the customer service business. We've been in tight places from the beginning. So they went back and they looked at, okay, what's our infection rate? 0.8%.
Wow.
So less than half of the nationwide infection rate is Southwest employees and other airline workers. I found it to be true with other airlines too, that were doing the same practices that we were. So among our like peers, 0.8%. So yeah, less than half. So it just goes to show that wearing your mask, social distancing, washing your hands. We're going to do limited entries. We're going above and beyond with the temperature checks. They don't do that going into the airplane. All of these things that it makes a difference. And it's not, I don't feel like I'm getting so comfortable with the mask now. Nancy laughs at me because I'll come out of someplace, I'll be in the car, I'll be talking to her, and she's like, you can take your mask off now. I'm just so used to it. But it just goes to show that it works. And it's about, personal responsibility, and it's also about, it truly is about loving your neighbor as yourself. I would feel so horrible if I was the one that somehow had gotten infected and I passed it to someone else.
Exactly. And I think those that I've talked to, that's they that have had COVID, they are, and again, I haven't talked to a bunch, but those I have talked to, they have been more concerned about who they have given it to as opposed to their own well-being, and I think that just speaks of the impact it has on our
My wife
lives.
Nancy is high risk.
Right.
I've got, we've got, I mean, of course, my parents. I've got my, some of our good friends and neighbors. Eldest has leukemia. She can't get COVID,
Right. Yeah.
right, and survive well. I mean,
So what?
Fighter, but.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is as we think about regathering for worship, that we really do need to practice social distancing, like you and I are doing. We need to wear masks as much as possible and keep our hands clean. That the video that you referenced and the documents that we put out as we talk about regathering for worship, where we're requiring people to wear masks and social distance, that's really safe practices, not only for myself, but to be a Christian brother and sister.
Yeah, and I ran this by Nancy just to make sure my argument was logical and valid. But one of my neighbors, our neighbors are always like, "Oh, you're heading out to church, you're doing this," and they know that we haven't been because of the, but we've invited them to watch online and things. So if one of those neighbors comes to me and says, "Hey, notice that you're going back to church, don't you think that's risky?" And I know most of my neighbors now, they're not doing the Publix pickup anymore. They're going to the store, they're shopping, they're wearing their mask, but they're shopping, they're eating meals at restaurants outdoors, they're trying to patronize and help the economy, all those great things. So I feel like, and I believe it is a truly reasonable statement, that if we do the things that are on that video and we wear the mask, social distancing, keep our hands clean, all of those good things, if we do that, I can invite my neighbors, and I love my neighbors. I can invite my neighbors, and there will be, at minimal, the same, if not less risk than them going to the grocery store.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And
I would hope so.
And and I think that's a reasonable statement, and that's the way I'd like to look at it. But it takes all of us together doing that. And if we do that, we can invite people, and we can do that. And my wife Nancy can come to the service because even though she's high risk, she's willing to accept that risk if that's what it is.
Very cool.
Because you have to live life.
That's right. So. We want to move forward. I don't think I'm okay saying. I think this is this is normality now. Yeah. It's not one day we get to go back to the way things were. I think this is life. We move forward. We adapt. And I think God wants us to do that. And at the same time, God wants us to care about our brothers and sisters and not just say, I don't need to wear a mask. And they always say it in that tone of voice too.
Exactly.
But I need to be compassionate and gentle. It goes back to that Philippians 4 that you read. It's thinking about other people and being positive.
And also, Pastor Glenn had a sermon about 6 weeks ago about judgment. Judge not and you shall not be judged. And, don't point out the speck of dust in your brother's eye when you have a plank in your own. And so in that same vein also too, I would never want to be judgmental for the person who truly didn't feel comfortable, or that person who is true high risk and they aren't willing to accept that risk of coming. No, there is no judgment. That's not, and none of us should try and make anyone feel guilty for saying, I'm not ready yet.
Right. And in light of that, we're going to continue our quality online worship services. We're going to continue these conversations. Roger and I are time for a commercial. Roger and I are just about to start a new study in Psalms.
That's right.
That's going to be out there. So there's going to be opportunities for those folks that need to stay at home or want to stay at home. But we're going to have both opportunities and try to do them well. An in-person worship service and an online worship experience as well. So thanks for that, Roger. Appreciate you. What as you think about deacon ministry and your role as chairman of the deacons that you've done a great job with, what are some things that you think as we think about First Baptist and moving forward in these days of COVID, in these days of social unrest and that those litany of things, what do you see First Baptist as a lighthouse, as a pinnacle of hope? What do we need to be about? What are some things that we need to focus on from your perspective?
I think I really think, one, we need to grow. I mean, there's just, plain and simple, we need to grow. We need to be about the business of bringing other people to Christ and to grow our congregation in love. We've got a great pastors throughout. We've got a great, we've got a great facility, everything. We need to grow. That's one of the big things. The other is that we need to grow our ministry outside these walls as well. And I think that's the biggest thing. We do well with our foreign missions budget and giving, but here at home, Carol Conaway, who is, you've seen her classes as well, but Carol's a big volunteer in our food pantry. And so we were in the Deacon's meeting the other night, and she was sharing that they had last week over 70 families that came and needed food from our food pantry. Well, just figure, if there's 3 to 4 people to a family, I mean, that's well over 200 people that needed that ministry. That's huge. And that's, and so I count it as a privilege that we have that and that we can do that. It's things like that that I think are where our heart should be and our ministry should be. We've got so many social justice issues here as well, and in this time and the political climate, and so we've got our fast ministry, and there's of course Celebrate Recovery, our divorce care. We've got all these great things, and all of those too can reach out.
Oh, absolutely.
I was talking with the heads of our divorce care ministry, and they were saying that they actually have some divorce attorneys that refer their people to us for that. That's amazing. That's but that's a great ministry and a great opportunity to hopefully get them involved in our congregation as well. And so I think that's it. The focus, not just among our corporate ministry, corporate worship, but we got to look outside the walls. We got to be the church of St. Petersburg, and if I see us as where we need to grow, and if I have a vision for what we need to do, it's especially, I'll call it home missions. We need home missions. We need a really strong home mission program for St. Petersburg.
Cool, just to reaching out to our community. I think that's so true. And about growing, one of the things that I think we've talked about before in one of our mini studies is the reality that Jesus and those 12 disciples, that you and I are to think about this, you and I are literally sitting here today because those 12 disciples told somebody, and they told somebody, and they told somebody, and they told somebody, and you and I are sitting here today because somebody told somebody about who Jesus was. And I think, we're just one generation away from that not happening, and the importance of us continuing to, like your pilot friends that you sit in the plane with, and the folks that you have opportunities just to say, not so much tell them about First Baptist, but tell them about what Jesus is doing, and invite them to come and experience the Jesus that we all know in our local churches. I think that's so true, and doing what you mentioned about local missions here in St. Pete. A lot of hurts, a lot of needs.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. I probably, as the one that's answering the phone these days for the switchboard, I probably get 4 or 5 calls a day, even through the weekend, about people in need, want to know about the food pantry, want to know about opportunities to get their bills paid and help with some situations. So the needs out there are huge, and we are the ones that we say have the answer. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
And a big part of that too is, stewardship. I mean, John and I have talked about in our Think Tank B, we did quite a bit on stewardship and giving, and it truly does take, I truly believe in biblically in tithing, that 10% off the top, to the church, and that tithe, but what that tithe does in being able to support these ministries is huge, and to be able to give to those that are in need. So I highly encourage you also to think about your tithing and make sure that you're right with God in that part of your relationship as well.
Absolutely. And I think, again, we're aware that a lot of people they're strapped financially. And I get that. But I think everybody can give $5, and I think each one of us needs to look at where we are financially and say, I can give something to help other people in need. I can give something to the church to help the food pantry, to help Celebrate Recovery, to just help the ongoing ministries of First Baptist. And that something is just to start.
Yeah.
You may give $5 a week. Give a couple of bucks a week, but just start that practice and then incrementally increase it to where those folks that are tithing, that are giving 10% of their income, maybe they can up it to 11 or 12%. And I think that's how growth happens. And I think it grows us spiritually as well.
And what happens too is, if you're struck, because I've been there, Nancy and I,
Sure.
we've not been through those times when we're newly married and we didn't have anything. Just put it that way.
Yeah.
Been there. But when you give charitably and sacrificially to God, when you do that, there's something there that happens because you're not concentrating on you.
Mm-hmm.
You're concentrating. There's someone else out there. Their situation is worse than mine. The mission of the church is a beautiful thing, and it needs to go on. These things. So it makes you think above and beyond yourself when you give,
Right.
and that's that's actually healing. It's good when you're tight on money.
Yeah.
It's like I've got my problems, but others do too, and there's greater things. There's greater things, and so the ministries. And so it just helps you think beyond yourself.
It really does. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate your words. Appreciate your service. Appreciate your ministry, your friendship. Thanks for hanging out with me a couple hours each week here as we teach. Again, Psalms, the story behind the Psalms.
The story behind the Psalms.
That starts next week. Psalms 3. Mm-hmm. Read it up. Watch it. 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings. It's when it airs. If you come to worship, you're gonna have to watch it a little later, but it'll still be out there. But thanks, brother. Thanks for being here. God bless you. Thanks for being with us tonight. Hope to see you in worship on the 1st. If not, hope that Roger and I will see you as we teach the Psalms. God bless you. Be wise, be safe, be the church out there.
God bless you. Thanks for listening to me.